A new republic. Once upon a time in the Americas, there was a great war between three nations, Britain, France, and Spain. After almost 7 years of fighting, they came to an agreement. You see, these three nations all wanted land in the same area. In the agreement they made, France lost all its land in North America, and Spain was given all the land to the west of Great Britain's 13 colonies. France was not very happy about losing all its land. In order to pay for this long and costly war, the King of Great Britain decided to tax the colonists, which means make the people living in his colonies pay extra for certain things. The first law put taxes on anything that had to be printed, such as newspapers, magazines, playing cards, and stamps. The colonists got so angry that they made the British take away those taxes. But then, about a year later, the British made a bunch of new tax laws that put taxes on things like glass, lead, paper, and tea. This time, the colonists got even angrier. The British agreed to get rid of all the taxes except for the tax on tea. But the colonists were still really mad about that tax on tea. In one city, they started taunting the British officials who were there to make sure they paid the taxes. The officials got really fed up with them and they shot at some of the colonists. After that incident, the colonists were outraged. So, to protest the taxes, some of them got on a boat dressed up as Indians and threw boxes of tea into the harbor. This made Great Britain very upset, because that tea was worth a lot of money. Since the colonists had misbehaved, Great Britain passed new laws which greatly limited the freedom of the colonists. These new laws became known as the Intolerable Acts, because they truly were intolerable. After the Intolerable Acts, the colonists became aware that they needed to take more aggressive steps in order to protect them and their freedom. They called a meeting which united the 13 colonies. At that meeting, the colonies decided that Great Britain had no power to pass laws in the colonies, and that they would stop trading goods with Great Britain. At this point, things were very tense between the colonies and Great Britain. Some colonies had even begun forming small armies in order to defend themselves if they needed to. The colonies' army, which they called the Continental Army, was poorly trained, had barely any supplies, and had almost no experience. Because of these rising tensions, the king ordered troops to one city to take possession of the weapons and ammunition that the colonists had gathered. Now, the British army was one of the best in the world. They were highly trained, had an excess of supplies, and were almost undefeated. It seemed unlikely that the Continental Army could win. Now, when the British got to the place where the colonists had gathered the supplies, they were met by the Continental Army, who was ready for a fight. In the middle of the standstill, somebody fired. No one knows who or what side, but that was the shot that started the American Revolution. The Continental Army, hidden by trees, easily defeated the British Army, who was marching in formation in the open. After this altercation, the colonies had another meeting, this one called the Second Continental Congress. At this meeting, the highly educated Thomas Jefferson was given the responsibility of writing a Declaration of Independence. This declaration stated that the colonies were now separate, or independent, from Great Britain. By declaring their independence, the colonies had ensured that there would be a war in the Americas. There was no longer any hope for a peaceful solution to the conflict between the colonies and Great Britain. Thus, the long and difficult war began. The Continental Army was lucky to receive help and supplies from the French, who were still a little bitter about losing their land to the British after the French and Indian War. One of the most difficult times was the winter they spent in Valley Forge. It was really cold and supplies were running low. Everyone was miserable, but it ultimately made them better soldiers in the end. One cool moment during the war was when Washington and his men crossed the Delaware River during a surprise attack on the British. It was Christmas Eve, super cold, and the British were not expecting the attack. That's what made it a brilliant victory for the Continental Army. The last battle of the war was in Yorktown in 1781. The British surrendered, and the colonies were free once the Treaty of Paris was signed. Since the United States was now officially an independent nation, they needed some kind of government. They held another meeting and created a document called the Articles of Confederation. This governing document had a flaw. The states were not united by some kind of central government. The country could not do important things like pass taxes and raise armies under this document. So they got rid of the Articles of Confederation and came up with something new. What they came up with was the United States Constitution. The Constitution allows for a stronger central government that can do the important things a nation has to do, but all with the consent of the people. This type of government is called a republic. After the Constitution was approved, a new republic was born. The end.